Cool. That seems to be working. We hope. Was that an error? Okay, we're fine. All right, so let's go to Unity. Where's my Unity? Did it crash? I think it did. Okay, cool. So I made this folder. This new scene. That scenes week 2. I'm gonna put it into a folder called week 2. So everything that I'm gonna work on today will be in that folder. This is my week 2 scene, and it's 3D by default, but it doesn't matter. I can always click this 2D button here, and this will make my camera 2D up here. So that will swap between 2D or 3D, and I'm now on 2D camera. Okay, 2D building mode. I can click here. I'm going to create a camera just so I know that this is where I'm looking at, and that's fine. It's here, and now I'm going to do the Tilemap stuff that I was saying. So for a Tilemap, let me get ground. And to import anything to Unity, there's 2 methods. You can either in Unity right click, import new asset, and you can import an asset, so like a 3D model, a sound, an audio file, whatever. But we can also just drag it in. This one is the one in the middle, so let me drag that in and drag and drop, and that should come in no problem. Okay, and this comes in by default as texture type default. If I'm working, yeah.
It can't be any kind of image.
It should be. Good question. You can do PNG, JPEGs, blah, blah, blah. You can do SVG. What you should do, if possible, is PNGs. PNG for game developments are the standard. SVGs, sometimes you use them for UI and stuff. If you don't know SVG, it's a vector. But most of the time, PNGs, you'll be okay. All right, so it comes in usually as texture type default. If I open this, I get a bunch of stuff. But for now, I just want to do sprite 2D and UI. So it's just a sprite 2D. If I drag that in now to the scene. Oh, I need to apply first. Sorry, one sec. It gives me the sprite. And I should be able to drag it in. And you see like a tiny little sprite here. Tiny little sprite. And I can use it like this. So this comes in. If I click on this, it's got a transform. It's got a sprite renderer because it knows it's a sprite. And I can add box collider 2D, for example. And now it's got collision. I can build my level like this. No problem. So I can make like loads of these little guys and create my entire level like this. If you press V, you can snap. So you can do stuff like this as well if you want. And these are all little collision boxes. But this is a little bit, it depends on the style of game you want. If you have a more organic looking thing, you might build it out of like your own pieces, like what I'm doing. Or we can do something called a Tilemap, which I'll just show you real quick, which will allow me to draw. So the first thing I need to do is set the pixels per unit for this. Let me just go through this. So texture type, I just changed it to sprite, 2D and UI. It's a sprite. The sprite mode is single, meaning in this, because Unity doesn't know, right? We have the other picture here that is multiple. It has like 16 different sprites inside it. In this one, we only have one sprite. Unity doesn't know, so I need to tell it single, no problem. Pixels per unit. So if I have a 1 unit size, and almost everything in games is built off a unit, how many pixels? The thing is 128 by 128, so I'm going to tell it 128 pixels. Does that make sense so far? All good? Okay. So the rest of the stuff, you can like leave it. It should be okay. We can leave most of this stuff. If you have pixel art, sometimes with the filter mode, you might want to change that to point, because it will make the pixel art blurry if you get like a pixel art asset. But otherwise, you can leave it as it is. Mine isn't really pixel art, so that's fine. So I need to go to Tilemap. So I want to create a... Oh, can I do 2D? I need to download the Windows Package Manager. So this is the Package Manager. So that's in Window Package Manager, and Unity will have like other stuff, like other kind of like functionality that you can download from the Package Manager. So for example, there's 2D here, 7 packages included. If I open them, animation, sprite animator, Tilemap editor, which is what I need, and this will allow me to have the Tilemap system. Does that make sense? So it's like a plugin almost. All right. So there's stuff for everything else. It's like AR stuff here as well, mobile, VR. So it just means your Unity install isn't huge. You can have a smaller install and then install the packages that you need later. So let me just install this. And it should be pretty quick. Cool. It's Window Package Manager. So Window Package Manager, right here. So mine's installing. It's already downloaded. Has a bunch of stuff inside it. You can check what they mean. Yeah. Yeah.
I don't have 2D.
You don't have 2D. Okay. So when you open Package Manager, it may only be showing you my project. So if you click here, packages, and go to Unity registry. So that's all Unity packages possible.
Are we downloading Tilemap editor?
I am just downloading 2D package, so everything, including Tilemap editor. So I'm gonna do this again. So if you can't find this, please have a look. Just give me 1 sec. It's lagging a little bit. So Window Package Manager here. Window Package Manager. And if it doesn't show, you need to click Packages and then go to the Unity registry. Right? And you should see 2D up there. Is that okay? Anyone got it? And then you can install just the 2D package, which will include Tilemap.
So where would you go after Unity?
Packages, Unity registry, and then click on 2D. And you should see a little install button here. If it's not working for anyone, just let me know. Yeah, there should be 7 packages included in the 2D.
So we don't need to download it.
If you click on 2D and you install the 2D, it should be in there. But did you click install? Yeah.
At a ground, like, so can we just that the scene, or how are we gonna add the ground?
Yeah, so that's what I showed. I can just click and drag it in. Yeah, I can do that. Or what I'm gonna do now is there's a system that you can draw with it and like paint ground almost.
Is there a reason that dragging is not working?
For you? Do you set it to a sprite? When you drag the image, no, it's on default. So I'll click on that sprite 2D UI. And apply. Yeah. And then now you can run it. So my tilemap's in here, so if I right click now I should be able to do 2D object, tilemap. And let's do a rectangular one, that's just the basic tilemap. And then I can go to create a tilemap. So I need to go to window, tilemap editor, where's the editor?
Did you choose a rectangle?
Sorry, rectangular.
Jetzt hast du beide Sachen gemacht. Einmal diese Pellet-Sachen und einmal das Sprite an sich. Ah ja. Wahrscheinlich.
Where is tile palette? Tile palette.
Das zweite ist jetzt
Ah.
sozusagen. Aber irgendwie
No, that's tilemap. I want tile palette. Where did it go?
was hat denn das Bild für eine Größe?
Okay, here. So it's window 2D tile palette. Really annoying. Okay, so what I need to do is I need to make tiles that I can use in my tile map. So let me drag this one in. Let me create a palette first, sorry. So I'm going to call this platforms. So I'm going to create all my platforms here. Create. Cool. And then I'll drag in any sprites that I want to use. Now because I set the, let me call this middle ground tile. Because I set this tile to 1 to 8, it fits exactly in the unit, in 1 unit size, alright? So with this selected, what I can do is, see I have like a brush. So I can just go, and now I have like a tile, like a level, sorry. And I can add more tiles to this. So let me try and add another one. So I know I have the bottom. Does that work on the bottom? Maybe this one. This one works on the bottom. So yeah,
Where did you import it from? Like
it's just a sprite. It's just an image that I found online.
online, yeah, from which site?
I just searched for
You were on Fab something.
open game art, but I'm just gonna put it into Discord actually. Okay, so I'm gonna try. Obviously, I can keep going, right? But it doesn't tile below. If I zoom in, you see that they don't tile above and below, and that's why I have a bottom piece here. Where is it? This one, bottom piece. I can import that as well to Unity. Make sure that's also sprite 128. Apply. And now I can use this one. If I drag this to my palette, now I have 2 different tiles to use. Bottom, ground. And I have this one down here as well. So I can click on that. Now I'm using that one instead. Does that make sense? We okay so far? Yep. So I have painting. I have erasing. So I can erase. So just delete stuff if I went too far. And I also have like a box one here. And then depending on which tile I'm selecting, I can create like a wall, for example. Yeah.
Did you say that when you put these tiles, you automatically have collision enabled?
No, I will set it to have collision now. Okay, so I'm just going to make this for now. Let me actually make one small platform. Window, 2D, tile palette. I'll just make one small platform here. Okay. So right now, they're in there. If I create a little sphere, let me remove the sphere collider and add a circle collider and add a rigid body 2D so it falls. If I press play, it's not going to interact because the tile map doesn't have a collider on it as of now. It will just pass through, which is not what I want. Cool. Right, so it doesn't work exactly how I want. So remember that we can add components, right? So if I go back to the tile map, this is, let me call that platforms. I can call this one platforms. I can add if I search for collider, there should be a Tilemap collider 2D. And that should add collisions. Did it add? I don't think it added. Cool. And you see that now I have collisions, right? However, notice one thing. So at the moment, the Tilemap collider component is making one collider. You can't really see it, but it's making one collider for every single tile, which is not efficient. It just means like I have loads of little colliders. Sometimes if I have something moving across it, it can get caught in the differences between the colliders as well. So if I want, I can also do something called a composite collider. Composite collider is on. I just need to make sure that I tick use by composite here. And I don't know if you can see the colliders now become, instead of like single ones, they like draw around the entire tile map. Does that make sense? Or so if I press play, it should work the same. Oh, I forgot to make it sorry, I added a rigid body 2D for some reason. No, I want. Okay, and then the other thing I can do as well is, because this is a composite tile, I should be able to remove tiles in real time. and it should, you see the collider is regenerating in real time. So for example, you can use this to create destructible environments. So if anyone's played Terraria, knows of Terraria, it's like tiles and they have collision, but you can blow them up. This uses a very similar system. So if I blow it up and get rid of these tiles, the simulation updates synchronously. Okay?
Sorry, Basil, so
Yes.
when you say composite collider, you mean you're getting rid of the internal little colliders and
Yes.
making the shell?
It's one whole shell, yeah. Okay, so those are tilemaps. Now someone asked me about a background. So this is important for not just 2D, but for 3D as well. I'm just going to find a background. Just whichever one, doesn't really matter. So I brought in this like huge background image. I'm also going to make it a sprite. Apply. But when I bring this in this case it's fine, but sometimes you may have stuff where the sprite shows in front, for example. So like this. So they're 2D, and when they're in 2D, the way they render is not based off the Z difference. So what I mean by that is the camera's here, right? It doesn't matter if I put this all the way behind. If you look in the 2D view, it's still showing in front. Okay, so it doesn't matter the difference, the distance from the camera, because as far as the camera is concerned, if these are 2D items, it doesn't really matter. You can kind of see it's still rendering in the bottom right. You can see that it's still rendering in front. And that is controlled by the sorting layer. So for everything in 2D space, there's a sorting layer and there's an ordering layer. So the platforms, my platforms are in sorting layer default. Is that controlled here? And my background, let me call this background instead of this, is also in default, but I set it to order in layer 1. So I can do a few things. I can make it -1, so it's going to be behind the platforms because they're on 0. Or I can also make a different sorting layer. So I can add a sorting layer, add one. I'm going to call this background. If I go back to background, change it from that to background layer. Let me make sure that background is behind. So that means anything in the background layer will always be behind anything in the default layer. Does that make sense? Right? So I can have as many things in the background as I want. I can have loads of stuff going on, and I can control like their order, but they'll always be behind default layer. And that's very commonly used to, like, for example, have the player on a player layer. So then I know that say everything in the background will be behind the player. Everything that's in the foreground will always be in front of the player. So I can have that using sorting layers. Okay? So that will, for example, control what my background looks like. And there's multiple ways to do background. You can do like a UI background. You can do like what I'm doing with the texture. You can also encode. If the texture scrolls, you should be able to, where is it? You should be able to scroll this. I can't do it in here, but I can scroll the texture as well, so I don't have to move it. I just scroll the texture on the background. Okay, So, what else did we need to do? We wanted to give this thing some, like a player, a little player, right? So what I'm gonna do is, let me just bring in my little character. Okay, so, oh, why is it red? I'm not sure if this is working. 1 second. It is. Okay, it's fine. And then this is 256 by 256, but I'm not doing single as before. This is multiple, and each of these units, the whole thing is 256, but I want each of them, one of these things, to be 1 unit size. So that's 256 divided by 4, which is 64. Yep. So that will be pixels per unit, 64. Does that make sense? So if I drag that in, you should see like one of them. Oh, apply before. Where did it go?
You need to understand automatically which one.
What do you? No. That's what we're gonna do now. I'm just wondering why it's not applying. Sprite 2D, sprite mode multiple, pixels per unit. Oh, okay. So I need to go here in multiple. Go to the sprite editor. Sprite editor. And what I can do here is slice. So I can do automatic. I'll show you what it does. Automatic will draw a little sprite around each thing. And that can be useful depending on what you are doing. Sometimes you do want an exact little sprite. But I don't want that. I want it to have the whole cell size, because I'm going to use each cell size as an animation. So I can do it also by slice, change it from automatic to like cell size or cell count. Let me do cell count. So I know there's 4 by 4. And slice. So now I have each of these is 1 sprite. Cool? Slice. This is in, hold on, let me apply. This is when you go here, sprite editor. If you're not getting a slice, you need to make sure your sprite mode is multiple, because it needs to know that there are multiple sprites. So if I open up this now, you see this little triangle here, you'll see that I have 1 individual sprite for each of them, because I've told it to cut all the little sprites. So I have like a single sprite for each thing.
So can you show us what you did in the slice?
I'm gonna redo that whole sequence again, okay?
Yeah.
Alright, so I'm just gonna delete this whole thing. So again, drag and drop it in. Oop. I need to make sure that it is a sprite. I need to make sure that the pixels per unit, for me it's 64, because each one of those little things is 64 units. So 64, it is going to be multiple, sprite mode multiple. And then I go to the sprite editor. Let me apply. This is the sprite editor. And I have a slice thing here. Slice. And I can do, I did it by cell count. So because I know there's 4 animations wide and 4 animations high in the column and row. 4 by 4, hit slice, and it slices. Can I continue, or do you need a bit of time? Bit of time?
No, I'm just how to remove the purple. Is this something essential to have it?
What purple thing?
Behind the character, there was a purple thing.
Oh, when I changed it to like 2D, it just disappeared. So
Oh, yeah.
I think that was a bug. I don't know what that was. After I slice, just hit apply. Bottom right is an apply button, and then that's as far as I've got. Let me have a look. Yeah. It's fine. Are these set to sprites? Yes. The pixel size is correct. Sprite mode. One, two. See if that works.
How do we open
Scroll down to the bottom. Okay, perfect. Looks like they work. Now you should be able to. Anyone need help? Yeah. Okay, let me just pause the recording. 1 sec. Let me redo that. So I'm gonna pick one of these. I'm gonna pick that one because I want a side scroller. I'm just gonna start with this just so I know the size. I have the sprite there, just so I know how big to make the collider, how big to like control all the ground checks and stuff. So I'm gonna put it there. That's fine. I'm gonna call this player. This is gonna be my actual player sprite. Player sprite. I'll call it player sprite. And I'm going to make and this is very important, I'm going to make a parent. Create empty parent. So there's a parent, and this is the player. This is the player sprite. Why? I have an empty game object, and this empty game object is going to hold my physics, my code, my actual interactions. Below that, as a child, is my sprite, and that's going to be the visuals. That means if I want the sprite to like rotate and spin or stretch, that's fine. It doesn't affect the actual physics. Make sense? Right? So the collider will stay the same. Any kind of like interaction physics-wise stays the same because it's on the empty game object. This layer and below controls the visuals. All right? And that becomes more important later on when you have like really complicated character controllers. We have a very simple one, but even for this, it's important to make sure to separate the code and the visuals. Code should never be in visuals. I have had problems before in huge studios where they had the code on the same layer as like the 3D model or the 2D model. And if you imagine like what happens if I have a collider in this and my animation does this? It means that this collider is moving, and whatever it touches, it does stuff to it. So you need to make sure to separate. So now I'm going to go to the empty. The sprite is here. I'm going to go to the empty, and I'm going to add that capsule collider I talked about. Capsule collider 2D. And you can see it here. I can control the offset, like that's, oh, sorry. How high it is, like how offset it is. So something like this maybe. And then the size here as well, like Y direction, X direction, the size. Usually you make it a little bit bigger than you need to be. Just a little bit bigger. Let's offset that below, something like this. Okay, so that means any collisions will happen. They'll hit that collider. It won't be like directly into the sprite. It'll be a little bit. Depends. Some games like to have it like smaller so that the sprite, the visual can actually like clip into stuff. So for example, they might. Oh, sorry. They might have it so like it's like this, so you can walk a little bit into a wall, if that makes sense. Okay, so I'm gonna do something like that. I don't really care if the tip of the hat collides with stuff. All right. So that has collisions. Perfect. Collisions are sorted. The reason I use capsule is because it's a very quick and easy way, I told you, of being able to go up ramps and little like edges. It's not going to get caught on a corner. It'll just bounce a little bit over it. Okay? Now, I need to move this character. So anything to do with physics needs a rigid body. What type? 2D. You guys are the best. Rigid body, 2D. Perfect. Need to make sure it's dynamic because it's going to be running. So this is important here. Dynamic, kinematic, and static. If you're if you have something that needs to detect collisions, anything that detects physics, detects collisions, detects something entering it, whatever, needs a rigid body. But let's say I have something that I want to detect, but I don't want it to move. I can set it to static. That way it doesn't calculate. It's not as expensive because it knows that it doesn't need to move. In this case, it needs to be dynamic because it will move. Okay? So if I go back to that sphere, for example, where's that sphere? This does fall, but if I set it to static, it will not fall. Doesn't do anything. Shouldn't do anything. Please. In your own time. Cool. Yeah, just stands there in the air, right? Nothing. It is still useful because it can still detect collisions on it because it has a rigid body. So let me put that back to dynamic, sorry. And then, so here's the player. Cool. The other thing I'm going to do, and this is one of the exceptions. You know, I said that you shouldn't have multiple colliders in something. There are exceptions. So one of these exceptions is I'm going to add a box collider, 2D. So it has two colliders, but the box collider, I'm going to make a trigger. Do you remember the trigger from last week? Yeah. Yep. So triggers can detect when other colliders enter them. How this is useful is, let me make it really small. Let's maybe something like this. I can do it for taking damage, but more importantly right now, I need to know if I'm on the ground. So yes, I can do it. I can do other triggers for taking damage and stuff like that. So let's put this offset down right below it. And this is a trigger, so it won't affect it won't affect collisions. It will just detect stuff, and I can access it. Now, the reason why I'm putting it directly below it is because I know if that trigger is in a collider, I'm on top of something that has a collider, so I should be able to stand on it. Why do I need this? Does anyone have any idea why I might need this? To know if I'm on something that's solid. Because the physics takes care of my collision, so it's not for collisions. If I... Sorry? Yes, you can do it like that, so I can detect the type of collider that it is, so I might change my gravity. I can do that. But most importantly is if I have a bit of code that says when I press spacebar, jump. If I don't have anything to check if I'm on the ground, I'm just going to hit spacebar and I keep jumping and jumping and jumping forever. So this is a reason. So it detects if I'm on the ground, and then you can put an if statement. Only if I press spacebar and if I'm on the ground, then I'm allowed to jump. If I'm not, then I'm not allowed to jump. Okay? All good so far? Any questions so far? So this should work. We should see that it falls. It's got physics. The collider works the way it's supposed to. And that trigger below it is just a trigger. Doesn't do anything. It's still, I haven't done any code, so it doesn't do anything, but it should know that it's a trigger. Boop. Yeah, and you can see it in the ground, right? Oh. Okay. So, do you notice something as well? I don't know if you can see it on... I don't know if you can see it on the projector screen, but have a look at the colliders. they're like bright green, and then when I play, they are going to hit the ground, stop moving, and they'll kind of go a bit darker. I'll show you in a sec. This is... I'll get a better computer next week. See the way it like disappears a little bit?
Yeah.
Yeah. So what's happening is, it is as long as it's moving, it is calculating collisions. To optimize performance, once it detects that you stop moving, it basically kind of pauses the simulation. Now, if I move it again, it comes back up. I think I can even just manually move it. Yeah, you see the way it comes back up, and then it turns back off again. So when I move it, it's like, oh, I'm moving. Start detecting, and then stop when I stop moving. Now, this is fine for most things, but if I have a game where like I might be standing still, but something attacks me, something like that, you might not be able to rely on that physics calculation happening perfectly. So instead of having the collision detection here to be discrete meaning when it's moving, essentially, I can make it continuous. And I can even do like never sleep, so it's always calculating. And this now should stay on forever. So I want my player to be constantly calculating, usually. Cool. And it doesn't turn off. It's still calculating continuously. A little bit of a performance hit, but it just means at least my player is like constantly has physics working on it. Okay? All right. All good so far. That setup is very easy. I'm not going to set up animations and stuff. I probably won't get a chance to. But let's start doing code. So I'm going to add a component. And I'm going to call this week to player script. Let me just check my IDE. Yeah, perfect. Cool. Okay, so I have input.getAxis horizontal, that's fine. rb.addForce. What should I do actually? I'll do... No, I don't like this. Sometimes the AI stuff's not great. I don't like this. This is using velocity. Alright, so I have rb.addForce, and it'll be in a vector too. So and in the X direction, I will do Let's do an acceleration speed as well. Okay, so does that kind of make sense? I have an acceleration that I'll define in the editor, and it will multiply it by my horizontal movement. So if I press a little bit, the acceleration will be only multiplied by a very small amount. If I like slam the joystick to the right, it'll multiply it by maximum. Does that kind of make sense? Yeah? So only in the x direction, I have an acceleration float multiplied by my horizontal input. Let's see if that works. So let's go back to Unity. Player. Maximum speed, let me do like 10. We don't know the numbers yet. We have to test and see. And let's do my acceleration at like 10 as well. Might be too slow, might be too fast. We don't know. Press play. Why did it fall? So it fell because, let me do my max speed a bit higher. 20, 50. Whee! Okay, so it's working. Perfect. However, the problem is that it's falling, right? It's rotating. So I need to do something called a constraint. So on the player, on the rigid body, there are these things called constraints. Open constraint, and I want to freeze rotation. So now it can't rotate. So any force that I apply, it'll just be applied to it. There'll be no rotation available. Let's see that working. Cool. All right. My acceleration is a bit slow. I'm going to up the acceleration a little bit. And my max speed is maybe a bit high. So I might do max speed 5. And acceleration like 30 maybe. Let's see if that works. Yeah, it feels much better. Cool. I can also control, like, because the rigid body has drag, and has mass and it has drag and stuff, I can also increase the drag a little bit. So then it doesn't like keep sliding. It has a little bit of drag.
Does the player sprite have rigid body?
No. So the empty game object player has the colliders, the rigid body, and the code. Sprite is just a sprite. That's all it's doing. Yeah, so the drag, it makes it feel a lot better. I can actually control it pretty well. My computer's lagging a bit. Every time you play an editor, it's always going to be worse frame rate than actually building it. So my computer's lagging a little bit, and also because it's a terrible computer. But it's working. Okay? All good so far?
Yep.
Yeah?
Can you go through it again?
What, like everything?
No, it's just the drag thing.
The which?
The drag.
Oh, the drag thing. Okay, so that's here. In any rigid body, you can control linear drag right here. And that, mine is like, I set it to like a really little bit, so basically it slows over time. There's a little bit of speed dampening. Make sure to freeze rotation. Okay, so we got 15 minutes. Let's just do a last thing, which is do a little jump. Oh, can we? Yeah, we should. Yeah, let's do a little jump. Let's do it. Why not? Oops, sorry. Let me do public, float, no, jump, force. So then I have a separate jump force. Let me do it on spacebar, I guess. So let's see if this knows how to do that. Yes, it does. Well done. So this is again another Unity thing. If input, so everything in input is all about like inputs, so keys, whatever. So if input.getKey down keycode.space, if it gets the down of spacebar, it's gonna add the jump force. Okay? Yeah.
But what about in the controller? Like, because we given an example on for that.
Okay, then we can do like or.
So we said or and
Where is it?
the state. Oh yeah.
Yeah, so we can do input dot vertical. No, input dot. So I'm doing a bit of a hacky, but basically if you press up, it jumps. Yeah. All right. I can also do, I guess, input.getKey like A or something. You know, doesn't matter. So this should also mean that if I press the up arrow, it should also jump. It should. Okay. So vector2 jump force. I'm gonna also make sure if you look at the add force. So let me do it again. rb.addForce. If you look at the add force types, there is just a vector2 force, but there's also a ability to add like a force mode, and I want to have a impulse force mode. Force mode 2D dot impulse. So it's like instant. So this should mean this should mean that if I... Oh, my jump force is 0, I guess. Yeah. Let's do jump force 30 just to see. Oh, there we go. Too high. Still too high. Okay, so it's jumping. So I'm able to like do platforming now. However, there's a few problems, which is my gravity is super low. Also, where's my guy? Where's my guy? Guy, where are you? Wait, let me bring him back. The other problem is, let me zoom out. So remember I said I have a ground check. Oh, jump force is 1. So I can continue adding jump as much as I want. Which, like, you might want this as a game. This is basically Flappy Bird. I've made Flappy Bird. You're welcome. So the problem is that it's allowing me to jump continuously as long as I have the button held down, because right now all the code is saying is obviously just like as long as spacebar or as long as I'm pressing the input key. So your homework is to figure out how to make sure it only jumps when it is on the ground. Okay? I'll upload this to GitHub. And then next week we'll continue on. We'll finish the character controller, we'll set up animations, we'll set up the state machine, and then hopefully that should be okay. Sure.